Hey, how's it going everyone? Welcome to another CK3 guide. I'm Alex, and in today's video I'll be giving you some tips and tricks on how to have more fun in Crusader Kings 3. So I'm going to structure this video in a couple of different sections. We'll talk a little bit about the economy, we'll talk about succession, we'll talk about all the major gameplay mechanics that you may or may not know much about. So whether you played the tutorial or whether you watched my previous video where I covered a lot of different stuff in more detail, this video is going to help you in any case, so watch until the end, and if you have any questions, just let me know. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, so for the first section of this video, we'll be talking about the economy, more specifically gold. How do you make more gold? Real quick, I'm going to give you some quick tips and tricks, because otherwise this video will be very long, and I'll do some other videos covering more stuff in detail. But basically, to get more gold, if you hover this over this little tooltip, you can see that we have three categories. We have church holdings, vassal taxes, and domain. And the domain is obviously the most important one. That's basically this thing here, domain limit. And that means how many counties you can control yourself and get full benefits. So 100% of taxes, 100% of levies. And to increase this, you basically need higher stewardship. So for every 5 points of stewardship, you will get one domain limit. And you also want to work on getting a higher ranking title. So in this case, I'm a count. I want to become a duke, get a duchy. So conquer the counties and create a duchy. But even to create a duchy, you need gold. So that's what I'm saving up for right now, to create a duchy, which also helps with prestige, by the way. And if you find a wife that happens to have decent stewardship, you can, in your council, you can put her to manage your domain, and she will basically give you +6 stewardship. Just transfers it to you. Assist ruler is also okay, get some extra stewardship, but if you really want to focus on domain limit, then get a wife with like really high stewardship, put her on manage domain, and you will should be able to increase your domain limit. Now, your bishop can also be important. If he has a positive opinion, the higher the better. You have this little area here. You can see how much stuff he's giving you, taxes and levies. This will depend on how many temples you have in your domain. So if you have a lot of temples later on, which is a very viable tactic if you want to build a lot of temples. But I would say make sure you focus on the stewardship lifestyle, because if you plan on building a lot of stuff, you definitely need perks from architect, plus the architect trait. That will really help with reducing costs and increasing the time it takes for you to build buildings. That will obviously benefit you a lot. So unless you're focusing on stewardship, I would probably focus on buildings later on when I have a ruler that focuses on stewardship, because it's a lot more efficient. Now here you will also want to get extra stewardship, +3. And if you're really looking for some real quick gold, like in this case, I want to create that title, so I'll probably want to focus on +10% monthly income. And then also in my council, my steward, I would probably put her to collect taxes, which will bump up stuff a little bit, not much, but it will help me create that title faster, which will then increase my domain limit. I could conquer more stuff. So you can see how you can prioritize. Now the bishop, like I said, the higher opinion he has of you, the more stuff he will give you. Right now I'm not really getting anything because I don't really have a lot of temples, maybe one, plus I have some control issues. But basically another good way of increasing your gold, and not just gold, basically a lot of different things, is every county has this thing that's called development, which is like a passive value. So increases levies, taxes, supply limits. So focusing on increasing development, the second task, depending on how good your steward is, will typically be better, much better long term than simply collecting more taxes. So collecting more taxes would help you like short term goals if you want to create a title or something like that. But if we're talking about long term stuff, always have your steward develop typically the main county, like where your capital is, get extra development. So that's how you can get a lot more gold real quick, and some long-term stuff that you can do. You also have innovations such as ledger, and all of these categories have one innovation that will increase either development growth, or in this case increase your domain limit. So I'm gonna do some videos on all of that as well. But basically you can also focus on ledger. Right now I'm not the cultural head, but when I do become one, I'll also be focusing on this. This guy seems to be focused on that anyway, so it's all good for now. What else? When you have a lot of vassals, you'll be getting more taxes from them. You can increase their feudal contracts. Early on, I would say probably not a good idea because you piss them off and they're not giving you a lot of gold anyway. So by getting 10% more gold from a tax that they're paying you, might not even increase the value. So just leave it as it is. What else? Church holdings, already covered that. Unraised men at arms, showed you how you can decrease the cost with your marshal. And control, right now I would be getting a lot more gold, but since we were at some wars, my control is kind of suffering. So I'm using my marshal, and he's actually pretty decent, excellent skill. I'm using him to increase control in all of my counties, slowly but surely. And once that happens, I'm gonna get more taxes and more levies. So you want to maintain 100 control, obviously, otherwise you will be having penalties like this one here. And I think pretty much all of my counties are really suffering a lot, like this one. 95% reduced taxes, that's a lot. So I'm not getting anything almost from this. I will be getting a lot more. So make sure you pay attention to control as well. So that's it for the tips and tricks that I can give you for maxing out gold. When you go to war, you capture prisoners. If they don't contribute to the war score, you can always ransom them if the liege or whoever it is that's in charge of them is willing to pay you. Sometimes you get 50, 100 gold, depending on how much they have available, how valuable the prisoner is. So you can do that as well. And one last tip that I can give you about gold is when you have a lot of temples in your realm or your domain, your bishop will eventually become rich. You can imprison him if you need like a huge infusion of gold real quick. There will be penalties, obviously, but if you imprison him and he accepts, you can banish him from the prison, banish him from the realm, and then all the gold that he has will be transferred to you. So you're kind of seizing all of his assets. This can be very useful if you need to hire a bunch of mercenaries real quick. Let's say the Byzantine Empire invades you. Only way for you to defend is get more alliances and mercenaries. That actually happened to me. So that's 100% a viable tactic that can help you get out of a really tricky situation. But you gotta have a lot of temples in your lands, and I did have a lot of temples in that campaign. I constructed a bunch of them, so that can come in handy as well. Alright, so that's it for this little section about gold. Now let's move on. Okay, so in this next section we are going to talk about wars and alliances, and this is probably one of the most important things, especially early on when you start the game. Securing alliances. This can be very tricky if you don't have children or brothers and sisters, anyone that you can marry off. But at least if you don't have a wife, you will be able to make at least one alliance in the beginning by finding a wife. So I went for a relatively strong alliance. As you can see, this one is the first alliance that I made. This guy's quite strong, actually. He's a king. So I married his daughter, I think. I don't know. Yeah, his daughter. And actually, if I assassinate both of these, might be even able to inherit some lands, but I don't care about that. But basically, alliances, if you secure a strong alliance early on in the game, then it automatically makes other stronger rulers, like for example, the King of Bulgaria here, much less likely to attack you. And you will obviously be able to attack other rulers if you want to take their stuff. So this guy, when I started this campaign, he was quite stronger than me, so I wasn't really able to take him on like without an alliance. So if you have prestige and you get a strong alliance, then all of a sudden you can go to war, call your allies, but try and get someone who's like not too far away from you, because if your ally is too far and you declare a war and then the other guy just comes and sieges your capital and captures you, it's pretty much game over. So make sure you try and make an alliance, like a strong alliance, but not too far away from where you are. So that's what I can tell you about alliances. Alliances are super important, especially early on in the game. Have a bunch of children, marry them off, get as many alliances as you can, and you can actually do wars without even going to war yourself. Like you can just call your allies if you have a bunch of prestige, and not to mention that pretty much no one else will be attacking you when you have a bunch of allies. So that's it for this section. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about succession and how to manage your lands. So most of my campaigns are actually gone because the game got patched up and they're kind of invalid right now, so I'm playing a new campaign. And right now I'm only a count. I started like a very hard position to start off because I like a challenge. But basically, to manage your lands and succession, you don't have to be afraid of having a lot of children. A lot of players are worried, like if I have a bunch of children, they're gonna fracture my lands. I cannot change the succession laws. All children inherit equally. That's like a really painful way to leave your lands. As you can see here, we have titles lost on succession 3. So all of my children will get something, and the main one will get the capital. Now, if I was to move the capital, that will obviously change stuff around here. But the way that you can manage this is, the best tip that I can give you is to become a duke. So get counties, and then that's what I'm doing right now. I'm saving up to create the duchy. So there's only one county that I don't have, but I can actually create that duchy right now. So what happens now when we make this duchy, I'm going to spend the gold. Now I'm a duke, and all I'm going to do now is I'm going to focus on getting more prestige. So the reason why I want more prestige is because you have this little option here that's called add laws. And here we have feudal elective, 1.5k prestige. That's a lot actually. And what this does is allows you to basically put like a voting system and then just pick one of the children that you want. And if you control all the counties, this guy's not in my realm, so he doesn't count. Doesn't matter, he cannot vote. But if you control all the counties in a duchy, then only you get to vote. So no one else can vote. Now, obviously, on a kingdom level, you'll probably have another person voting, but typically you'll win anyway because your vote is stronger. But on an empire level, I had some empire titles before, that can be kind of problematic because you have a bunch of people voting. And some of them you can try and influence, like force them to vote like you do, get some hooks on them. So that's viable, totally doable, even on an empire level. But early in the game, when you become a duke like I did right now, and you control the counties, there's no one else who can vote. You can just pick any of these children right now and say, okay, I want this one to be my successor. And I don't have enough prestige to add that right now. But what will happen is that child will inherit the duchy, obviously my primary title. And if I had another duchy, I could do the same thing. Or if I had another duchy, I could add a law, and this one would be my primary. So I could give everything to my child. I would just basically add the laws to ensure that everything goes to the child that I want to go to. So if I want to play as this one when I die, this one has stewardship and learning. That's pretty good. I'm actually going to put stewardship, but learning is pretty good as well. No, in this case, I will probably pick learning because the child already has +5 learning. So that tells me that this particular kid is going to be much better at learning than stewardship. So I'm going to put her as someone who's focused on learning. So let's say I want to play as this one when I die, and I'm actually very close. Well, no, I'm not close to dying, but I'm wounded, so I have some penalties. So if you add the law in the duchy, then that duchy and all the counties in that duchy will go to that kid. So I can pretty much preserve all of my lands. And if I have like one county that doesn't really matter, it can go to some other kid. But if I wanted to, I could pretty much get a second duchy for that county. Like let's say this one here, we have the county of Zelengora. And then I can try and conquer enough land to create this duchy and then add another law. And then I can leave all of the lands that I hold to one child and just keep playing as that child and not lose a single title in succession early in the game. Now, you need a bunch of prestige. I would need 3,000 prestige in that case. So how would I get that? Well, you obviously want to have a chancellor that's very high skilled. Put him on foreign affairs to generate prestige for you. You want to have higher diplomacy yourself, so you could put your wife on court politics. As you can see now, I get +5 prestige, some general opinion. So The other thing that I would probably do is, now, since I'm a duke now, well, in this case, I probably wouldn't put court politics because over the domain limit, but you can see how it increases. Actually, it doesn't increase because it's not enough to increase it. So in this case, I would just keep it on manage domain, but I would switch to lifestyle and go from whatever. Right now I'm on stewardship. If I wanted to rush, I would probably put majesty focus +1 prestige. Right now I cannot do that because you can only change that once every 5 years. And then I already have a bunch of stuff here. Maybe see if there's any other perks that can help with generating more prestige. The reason why I was focusing on stewardship to increase my domain limit is because I was trying to get enough gold to create that title to become a duke, if nothing else. But right now I could probably go and try and focus on getting more prestige. And obviously you have all these decisions that you can take, like hold a feast or call a hunt. So if you focus on gold, actually, then you can kind of transform some of that gold into prestige. And if you go here, you can see what's giving you prestige. So house head, dynasty head, held counties, duchies, foreign affairs from your chancellor, and what else? Diplomacy, your diplomacy skill, and the lifestyle focus. So that's how I would get more prestige. And it's very doable. I did it many times, so you don't have to worry about it. Like, it's totally doable even early on in the game as well. Plus, call some hunts, hold some feasts, whatever else gives you prestige. You might get some other opportunities to increase your prestige if you focus on diplomacy. So it's all good. So that's what I can tell you about succession and how to manage your lands and how to ensure that your child of your choice gets all the lands that you want that child to get early on in the game without ever changing any of the laws, even if it's a female child. Just make sure that you consolidate your lands, create the duchies, add the laws, and make sure there's no one else who can vote. If you hold the counties, then there will be no one else who can vote. You can pretty much manage your succession. I've been managing my succession like that ever since I started playing. Never had a problem, even on a kingdom level. Empire is a little bit more trickier, but that's out of the scope of this video, so I'll talk about that in some other video. Okay, so in this section we're going to talk about your council members, how to get skilled labor for free pretty much. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks. Typically what people do is they put their vassals, try and appease them, like increase their opinions. But I personally prefer to have high skilled people on my council. Wife obviously depends on some alliances that you want to make, all that stuff. Bishop, you don't really have a lot of control over the bishop. You can try and assassinate him, you can imprison him, banish him, get another one that's not so stupid. So that's how you can increase your bishop's learning skill. Because when your bishop has a higher learning skill, he gives you more piety, he doesn't have all these negative side effects. And that goes for all council members. Depending on their skill, when they're performing certain tasks, there will be possible negative effects. And in this case, like for example, this marshal, he has excellent martial skill. As you can see, he has literally no negative effects. Like whatever I put him to do, it can only be positive stuff because he's very skilled. It's actually a peasant that I captured in one of the wars. He's young. He already has high martial, so I just kind of made him work for me, even though he doesn't like me. I don't really care. As long as he does his job, it's all good. Chancellor, more prestige, opinion increase, integrate title. That you don't need that in the beginning. Steward, collect taxes, increase development, promote culture, and spy master obviously disrupt schemes. So basically the way to get skilled labor for free is, I mean, you can like marry people, whatever, but one of the best ways is to go to your court area, because a lot of people don't understand that your court is a source of skilled labor. Like if you take a look at all these courtiers that you have here, and I had more of them, some of them left my court, some of them I killed because I didn't like them. And what happens is the same thing goes for your court physician. The court physician, the only thing that matters is the learning skills. You can see this one is excellent, so I'll put that one. But this woman at one point didn't have a husband. think she was in my court already, or maybe not, doesn't matter. Maybe this guy was in my court first. I think he was the one. So when this guy was single, I was very fortunate that he already had like high diplomacy, so I put him as a chancellor. So obviously I don't have to look for a chancellor, but I needed a court physician. So what I did is, after I get married, you want to put your wife on court politics, get more diplomacy, especially if you're focusing on diplomacy, because my guy at the time was focusing on diplomacy. So when you have higher diplomacy, what happens is your diplomatic range increases. You can interact with more characters in the world. So increase that with lifestyles and your wife. But then when you want to find skilled people for free, let's say that guy that I was talking about, so he was already in my court, high skill, already working on being my chancellor, but he was not married. So you want to go and let's see if I can find someone who's not married. You don't want to arrange marriage, because if you arrange marriage, then you will actually already marry them all off. So I don't. Okay, this guy. So I have my marshal. He's single. So let's say I wanted to find someone who's better at stewardship, right? Because this one is kind of bad, average. So I would go and do all that stuff with diplomacy and then go find spouse. Don't go arrange marriage. That will simply give you options to marry people in your court. You don't want that. You want to go find spouse and then simply filter by stewardship. So in this case, we have this woman. She's a lunatic, but I don't think it really matters right now. But she has 18 stewardship. This one probably would be better. She's 25. This one is 40. 17, so just 1 point less, but she's much younger, and she is deceitful, wrathful, and all that stuff, but I don't really care. So if we married those two, if it was a woman, you would go matrilineal, because then the person would come to your court. Otherwise, the woman might go to someone else's court if he's landed. If he's not landed, then he'll come anyway, but in this case, I'm gonna marry them. And this will also depend on your religion, like who can be. I don't think I can actually put that woman to be my my steward, because this woman is actually a vassal of mine. So that's probably the reason why I can have a woman on my council. Spy master can be a woman, and who else can be a woman? These three, I don't think they can be women, because that depends on your religion. But if I took this woman that just came to my court, and if I could put her on the council, then I would just put her to be my my steward, and I would get a skilled steward for free. So in this case, it would be in reverse. I would probably look for a woman in my court and then marry her to a high skilled steward, and then put him in the court. And you can do that with everyone, like your you can find a spy master, marshal, chancellor. I already told you how you can get rid of your bishop. So those are my tips, how you can get free skilled labor without paying anything. Take a look at your court, see who you have there, except your children, your bishop. Whoever's not married, like for example, this woman. Actually, not that one. Let's see if we can find out, like for example, this one. So this one is my courtier, she's not married. Now, let's see if I can find her a spouse with high stewardship. And sometimes you get, like this, can be random. I mean, depending on the situation in the world, sometimes you might find someone who's good, sometimes you might not find. So it's not guaranteed that you will find someone who's great. But in this case, if we marry her to this guy, then I can make him a steward. And you can see how you can get free skilled labor for free, including your court physician. So you will still have to pay for the court physician if you want to appoint them. But I can get, like typically the game lets you search for a physician. Sometimes you might get lucky and get someone with high learning skill, but most of the time they'll be like mediocre. But now I have a woman that's like excellent learning skill. So why is that important? Because the outcome when she treats you, if something happens to you, the outcome will greatly depend on their learning skill. So if they're like really poor learners, you're probably not gonna have anything good happen to you. And I'm just gonna put the wife back to manage the main, so I'm not paying any penalties, and that's it. All right, so that's how you get skilled labor for free. All right, so let's talk a little bit about lifestyles and focuses. And typically, what people do is they take a look at their ruler and the skills and the bonuses that he might have, like where you're gonna get faster experience. All of that is fine. However, later on in the game, when you have like a big kingdom or an empire, what you want to do is basically focus on a lifestyle that gives you most of the something that makes most sense. So you don't actually always have to go like this guy. Let's take a look at him. He doesn't really have any traits because he's the first ruler, so I wasn't really lucky to get any traits. But let's say he had some stewardship bonuses, and he's only having stewardship because the wife is giving me +6, so I will have equal stewardship in diplomacy. So let's say actually he had like diplomacy bonuses, and I focused him on diplomacy. But in this case, I want to increase my domain limit. That's one of the ways of getting extra stewardship plus the wife. So I would probably want to focus on this, especially since I was creating that title. But let's say I want to focus on assassinating people, and probably want to go with intrigue then. Or maybe there's some perks that you want to mix and match. So a lot of people, like, they pick one lifestyle focus and they just focus on that like all the way, since the beginning all the way until that ruler dies. That's not necessarily the best approach. You should be comfortable with changing your focuses. Yes, it's very nice when you can max things out. Like, I had a ruler that was like 90 something years old, and he had like all these bonuses, and he was a genius. So he had like full learning maxed out and almost full stewardship. So he was like overpowered completely. And I thought he was never gonna die, but he did die eventually, of course. And what I was trying to say is that you don't have to focus on one lifestyle. Focus on anything that makes the most sense in your current situation. So if you need extra domain limit, focus on domain focus. If you want to speed up your research, go into learning, get some extra piety. You want to start religious wars, get the scientific perk, 35% research progress. That's huge. If you want to focus on leading your own armies, going to marshal. So don't be afraid to change all this stuff. Every 5 years you can change your focus, and you should take advantage of it. Even if you like stewardship, maybe you want some extra gold like real quick. For the next 5 years you might go with wealth focus. Then you might want to go with duty focus, like whatever it is that you really need. Or you might, like I said, go into learning a little bit just to pick up 1 or 2 perks, then go back to stewardship. So mix and match for maximum results, and depending on your situation. And that way you will be able to achieve your goals much faster than just like, I'm just locked into diplomacy and that's it. Like, and now I have to go in here and here. No, you don't. I'll go back to diplomacy if I want some extra prestige in diplomacy. But right now, stewardship makes more sense for me, so that I don't have to pay any penalties for being over the domain limit. So that's what you should do with lifestyle focuses. Take a look at all of them, see what you need the most right now, take advantage of it. Okay, in this next section, we'll talk a little bit about research and innovations. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm going to tell you how to increase, how to speed this up. In this case, I'm not the cultural head because this guy is, but I'm going to get rid of him soon. So he's actually focusing on what I want anyway. He's focusing on ledger to increase domain limit because that's very important for your economy, like I already talked about. All of this stuff, most of this stuff is good, so it really depends on what you want to do. So read all of that. Typically they're pretty much the same, just different eras. But the tips that I can give you for research and how to speed it up is, well, it will depend on your learning skill. In this case, I'm terrible. I'm kind of stupid, so I get a little bit of piety and my learning is really bad. So what I would do is I would probably look for a wife that has like super high learning. Like, that's all I care about, like how high her learning skill is. And let's say she has like 21, 25 learning, something like that. Then I would go to council and put her on patronage. And as you can see, like, I can't demonstrate this now because I'm not the culture head, but this takes like 16 years. If I put her on patronage, it would take probably like 14, 13 years, something like that. So you can increase the speed by increasing your learning skill. But like I said, with the focuses, like I just talked about, If I wanted to really speed it up, I would probably switch my learning focus to either scholarship or maybe theology, get some extra piety, or maybe even medicine if I'm like a little bit messed up like I am right now. I'm wounded, so medicine might not be a bad idea as well. And then I would keep that on. Typically, you'll be able to get in 5 years until you can change it again. You should be able to get like 2 perk points. So I would get scientific. This will speed up your research progress by 35%. Then I would get probably pedagogy for additional skills for my children, if they are my wards. If not, you can also get plant cultivation, development, efficiency, or any of these other perks like let's see, faithful, whatever. So I would definitely focus on scientific. That would be like priority. So focus on that, get some extra piety, theology, whatever, extra learning, find a wife with super high learning skill, and you can turbocharge your research. You will be progressing a lot faster than most others. And in this last section, I'm going to give you some tips and tricks for dynasties and legacies. So renowned, right now I'm not really making a lot of it, but since I'm a duke, I'm getting more of it now. 5 living members. We already talked about succession and how to manage your lands and succession, so there's absolutely no reason for you not to have a bunch of children, so you can also secure a bunch of alliances. But one of the reasons why you want to have a bunch of children is, let's say you have a bunch of daughters, or even sons, doesn't matter really. You marry them off for alliances, so you get that, very important, especially early on in the game. But you also get renown, because what happens is, if I take, for example, let's see, this one. Now, right now she's my heir, but she is engaged to this count, so I don't think that's giving us anything right now. Nope. You have to do this with an adult child, so it won't really count unless they're adult. But what happens is, when you take a child like this one, and you marry her off to someone else who's like a ruler, it has to be a ruler. So you want to open the filter and put the ruler filter on. Then let's say you marry someone to a king, like typically male rulers will sometimes not have wives or their sons if they inherit lands and they become rulers themselves. So what happens is, if my daughter was this person here, then I would get extra renown every month for having a king by marriage. So, or in this case, queen by marriage. So that's why having a bunch of kids will give you a little bit of renown up front, but you can keep marrying them to rulers. So just make sure that you're marrying them to actual rulers, someone who's ruling a land, and you will get a bunch of renown. Now, why is that important? Because renown can be used to disinherit people, so you can manage your succession easier if you need to, for any reason. It can be used to call dynasty members to war. But most importantly, you obviously use it to unlock legacies. And legacies are very useful bonuses that basically apply to everyone in your dynasty, so not just to you. And you can mix and match, like you don't have to just progress all the way. But this has been changed in the last patch. The way that it works now, it costs 500 to unlock it, and then the cost increases by 500 each time. So you are kind of going to benefit more if you go all the way, because they tend to be more valuable as you go on. However, there are some legacies, the first ones in a couple of different areas here that I really like. For example, Noble Veins is not bad, 30% extra chance of inheriting good traits or new good traits. This can be very good, like I said, if you know how to manage your succession and you can have a bunch of children. That can be pretty nice. Desirable match, I typically tend to go for this one first, because when you have, like I said, when you have a bunch of kids and you want to marry them to rulers, plus 30 acceptance is pretty good as well. Pretty much guarantees that you can make that marriage happen, also for yourself, but for your kids as well. Fertility, not bad at all. This, like I said, this doesn't just help you, it also helps everyone in your dynasty. So plus 10% fertility for everyone is a lot. And what else? Not really fan of Guile. That's probably one of them that I almost always avoid progressing in. And Warfare is not actually bad. You get some nice bonuses for fighting. But Law and Blood and Learning and Glories for Prestige, Kin, all of those are nice. I mean, I'm not going to tell you which ones to pick. That's obviously up to you. I think that's the beauty of the game, that you just go with whatever makes the most sense or whatever you want the most. But I typically tend to avoid Guile altogether. So that's how you can get a lot more renown. You can read all this stuff if you want to learn more about it. And the first one costs 250. The next one cost increases by 500 each time. But if you have a bunch of kids and you marry them to rulers, you will be getting a lot of renown, and all of this stuff is like permanent bonuses that might not look like that much, but trust me, over the course of your playthrough while you're playing a campaign like 300 years, for example, everyone getting plus 10 prestige, that's a lot of prestige in your dynasty that's being generated. So yeah. Alright, so that's it for this last little section. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. And if you have any questions with regards to anything that I talked about in this video, let me know. I'll be happy to help you out. I know this video is a little bit longer, so I'm gonna wrap it up. And don't forget to subscribe, check out the playlist, like the video, all that stuff. And I'll see you around, guys.